Tonight, it's going to be an interesting one. Like I said, we're going to be all over the place, so hopefully you guys will follow along. I'll do my best to try and connect everything and make sure everybody doesn't get lost. So keep your hands and your legs and your feet and your juice boxes inside the ride at all times. And let's go ahead and start with the Monarch Mind Control program, which stemmed from the MKUltra and began back in the 1960s. Often tied to the entertainment industry, it does have reach into military and political sphere as well. So we covered this last week. The main goal of the Monarch Mind Control program is mainly the entertainment industry, but it does branch off into the politics as well as the military branch as well. Mainly they go after the entertainment industry because it's something that they realize that they can put within media in order to affect other people out there, mainly kids and majority female, because they're just more primed and ready to go when it comes to this type of technique. Again, the Monarch Mind Control targets their targets is most often children and usually female due to the trauma-based tactics that they use. And children and females are mentally more receptive to traumatic and emotional content, allowing them to be more influenced by this program. The target goal of the Monarch Mind Control program is to use ritual abuse mentally, physically, and sexually to gain control of a person. Basically, you want them to dissociate from reality, go back into their own head, and it allows them to do inner workings, plant new ideas and personalities into these kids. And then when they snap back into reality, the walls go up for that new stuff that was just put in their mind, and they don't even know who they are at that moment anymore. This is something that was done heavily to the Jewish kids back in Nazi Germany. They were doing this even to this day. They're still doing the experiments. That's an entirely different subject. We're not going to get into that, but this stuff has been going on for a very long time, and they figured out how to make it more effective even to this day. Now, using this type of abuse can cause a person to dissociate from reality, of course, and this allows the handlers to place in new personalities and new personas, which can be basically the new person when triggered. Now, if we take a look at a quote here by a woman by the name of Ellen P. Lachter. She's somebody who's spent a lot of time when it comes to ritual abuse to children, and she's been kind of blowing the lid off when it comes to mind control programming on kids. She says here, installation of mind control programming relies on the victim's capacity to dissociate, which permits the creation of new walled-off personalities to hold and hide programming. Already dissociative children are prime candidates for this programming. And so basically she's saying the best way to get into a kid is traumatize them mentally, physically, sexually, however you want to do it. Get them to back off of reality, to not know what's going on, to get lost in their own mind. And then you can go in there and start doing the work that you want to do, the sick and twisted work that they want to do. And so this is ultimately what the Monarch program is built around. Utilizing kids for this program not only allows easier mind control, but grants a slave, the kid, the victim, to influence other young children to follow based on idolization. Again, we see what's going on. I gave some examples last week when it comes to these people. You look at people like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande and Miley Cyrus and Britney Spears, and the list goes on and on. You look at these people, all the young girls, and some guys too, however you want to look at it, they idolize these people and they want to be just like them. They get their same personalities from them. They act like them. They get the same belief system as these people. And so ultimately what you do to these young entertainment stars when they're kids is you get them implanted with this stuff, send them out into the entertainment industry, and you start affecting the other people or the other kids as they grow up. Placing these people within the entertainment industry also gives control to satanic handlers in order to indoctrinate children with satanic, demonic, blasphemous content, as well as induce trauma on children through the content as well. See this a lot when you look at different movies or music videos, or even like CD case artwork and stuff like that, posters and advertisements and whatnot, there's some pretty sick and demonic stuff out there. Now, our first reaction as Christians when we see that we go, that's satanic. We understand the entertainment industry is run by Satanists and they put that type of stuff in there all the time. But what we don't realize is that's actually stuff that they are trying to use in order to get to the kids in this mind control type of level. I've seen countless posters and stuff where you have a famous artist who's covered in blood or surrounded by some type of ritual type of thing, or you look at Taylor Swift's video where she's dressed as Satan dancing in hell and stuff. It's not just, hey, here we are, we're Satanists, but there's actually a level of trying to affect the minds of the kids on a trauma-based level when it comes to this. Now, we covered with the list of Monarch torture tactics last week. We covered this at the end of the last episode. We're going to go over that again. I know there's some people who don't want to hear this, but I want to make sure if you guys didn't catch last week or you don't remember, you know what's going on. So if you don't want to hear this, it's kind of a hard to listen to. Kind of tune out for the next minute or so as we go over it. So some of the tactics that is used in the Monarch Mind Control program include taking children and locking them in boxes and cages and coffins for an extended period of time. There's a lot of damage that can be done when you stick them in confinement like that. Place them in restraints of ropes, chains, as well as sometimes they'll place them in hanging positions where it's uncomfortable, upside down and things like that. They'll do stuff like waterboarding and near drowning experiences. They'll do stuff extreme spinning as well as extensive light blinding. We'll get to that a little bit later, and I'll show you where that comes from. There's also things of getting kids to ingest other bodily stuff. There's things when it comes to food, water, and sleep deprivation. The use of drugs, obviously force feeding drugs into the kids. Forced near-death experiences. You create a controlled environment where the kid thinks he's going to die, and ultimately you scare the life out of them. Forced participation and or witnessing of torture, abuse, and sacrifice, whether it's animal or people. Forced participation of witchcraft and sorcery, sometimes public stuff. I just talked about how they do this type of stuff when it comes to CD artwork or posters or things like that. They force them to do that in order to have a mental effect on them. This one's a little rough. Forced abortions. We understand what's going on with pedophilia and stuff like that. They'll do that and then force an abortion upon the child. Forced blasphemy and desecration of Christian imagery as well as symbols and language. Basically, they get the kid to just go full bore against God, blaspheme God, do things like burn crosses and stuff like that. All the while, they will be blaming God for all of the torture and punishment that's being put upon the kid. So everything is directed towards God as he's the one that's doing it to them. They do this for this all the time. Forced surgeries. They'll force surgeries upon the kid. We see what's going on today when it comes to what they're trying to do with all the transgender surgeries that they're doing to kids. That's part of this. Harm or threats to family. Sometimes forced to watch family take harm in some type of way. You can actually find some interviews from celebrities who have admitted that they have seen their family members get tortured in front of them in order to get them to do what they want to do, as well as the use of illusion through digital reality to confuse and manipulate. This is the social media influence. They make them do all this stuff and then they put it on social media, and all the followers, likes and comments and stuff, they love them for it, and it causes a confusion. Well, I'm doing all this bad stuff, but people seem to love it, and so they don't really know what's going on, and it causes mass confusion. This is the stuff that's going on. Now, there's more to that list. I left off some of them because you just don't want to know. You get the point, let's just say. But this is stuff that is built into this Monarch program that's going on in front of us. Now, we have an idea. How does this get transferred over into media? How do they transfer this where, okay, they don't have access to do all these things to these kids? How can they use the kids that they do have access to in order to influence the other ones? Well, we start looking into things like Disney kid movies. And we will find that most involve a tragic or traumatic death early on, or some type of fantastical, mystical confusion element to it. Let's take a look at a few Disney movies that deal with death. I mean, this is stuff that we don't even necessarily think about it, but how many, these are just a few. How many Disney movies really revolve around the death of a family member? We see Bambi's mother, who's killed in Bambi, Mufasa from The Lion King, Quasimodo's mother from The Hunchback Notre Dame, Tarzan's parents, as well as the gorilla that raises Tarzan. Both of them get killed in the movie. Coda's mother from Brother Bear, the king and queen from Frozen, Ellie from Up. These are traumatic things that happen early on for very young kids to have to wrap their minds around. And if you don't have the proper environment to actually teach this stuff, and we see what's going on when it comes to TV and Disney movies and stuff like that, that's just the babysitter now. This is stuff that's going into the brain, and the kid doesn't know what's going on. They have no idea. And so they put these traumatic events into these movies for these kids early on. So they're just force-fed this traumatic event in order to shut down their mind and put them in the back, put them back into a disassociated reality. And so this is something that's truly there. And I've talked about in the End Times New Age series, you get to somebody like Walt Disney, who was part of the DeMolay group, which is the early on organization for the Freemasons. Now, Disney never actually became a Freemason. He was an honorary Freemason, but he wasn't actually fully there. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have the influence. You look at things like Club 33, you look at some of the props and stuff that he had going on, all the occultism and stuff in the movies and his animations and this type of stuff. You see that he was fully wrapped up in making sure that he was a part of this agenda that is ultimately being put on by Freemasonry and the CIA, because that's another element. If you guys don't know, Disney World down in Florida, all that land where that was purchased by the CIA and given to Disney in order to have him do all that stuff. So Disney was fully wrapped up in the CIA. And so he was fully wrapped up in getting this stuff going as well. And so it would make sense that in these cartoons and these movies that the CIA had influence on trying to do the different things that they wanted to do. Seeing as most Disney movies also inject the occultic and monarch symbolism, kids can be introduced to mind control programming through their TV babysitters. Now, there's another thing too on this is I got an email from a viewer who I know pretty well. She sends me a lot of emails and stuff like that, and she sent me a story after last week's thing on MKUltra Mind Control. And she said that back when she was in elementary school, 3rd or 4th grade, she was taken into like a movie assembly type of thing, taken into the cafeteria with a whole bunch of kids to watch some movies. And they were shown 2 short films. This was back, she said, between 65 and 70. This was going on. She was shown 2 short films. Think about it. Elementary school, 3rd and 4th grade, where she watched one of them that was about the murder of a clown, where they watched spears go into the clown. You'd see tears running down the eyes. It was just straight murder. She said it's like R-rated. Another short film that they were shown as kids was a couple who was running for their lives from people who wanted to murder them. And ultimately at the end, they were shot and killed after just running for their lives through, all these different harsh environments and stuff like that. And you look at, why on earth would that stuff be shown to elementary school kids? Why on earth would it be shown at school at all? But you look at that and you go, is that possibly part of something, an experiment that they were trying to do when it came to this? I would say yes. Now, I can't sit here, and hold up something that says that absolutely was what's going on. But when she sent that to me, I'm going, that certainly aligns perfectly with what they try and do when it comes to this trauma-based MKUltra Monarch program of traumatizing the kids through this imagery. And it perfectly aligns. So I don't know if any of you other guys that maybe grew up in the same time who had that type of experience as well, but I would sit there and go, that certainly aligns with the same type of thing. Now, the other type through Disney, if it doesn't necessarily deal with a traumatic death or something like that, is they do the fantastical or mystical, confusing type of theme. You look at something like Fantasia. How many people have ever seen Fantasia? I remember as a kid, I had no idea what was going on. I look at it today, and I still have no idea what is going on with that thing. Now, obviously, it's wrapped up in occultism because there's the magic and everything that's going on, but still, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's just a whole bunch of that stuff going on. But that's part of that mystical, fantastical thing that they got going on. The other one, which this one's important, is Alice in Wonderland. Both of these, Fantasia, Alice in Wonderland, there's some other ones out there as well, use pagan, mystic, and occultic symbology as well as themes to desensitize and confuse the kids. The goal is to introduce these themes early on while teaching kids to disconnect from reality and release into a fantasy world, which is really what these movies are about. It's about enter into this fantasy world of confusion and mysticism and leave the world of reality behind. This is actually a proven CIA interrogation tactic known as the Alice in Wonderland confusion technique. If we take a look at the CIA's 1963 Kubark Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual, on page 76, we will find the Alice in Wonderland technique. This is an official CIA document. Now, this manual is loaded. It is loaded. It's a twisted read, to say the least. But this is one of the tactics that the CIA used for counterintelligence interrogation. The aim of the Alice in Wonderland or confusion technique is to confound the expectations and conditioned reactions of the interrogatee. He is accustomed to a world that makes some sense, at least to him, a world of continuity and logic, a predictable world. He clings to this world to reinforce his identity and powers of resistance. The confusion technique is designed not only to obliterate the familiar, but to replace it with the weird. Kind of like those movies, Fantasia and Alice in Wonderland. Although the method can be employed by a single interrogator, it is best adapted to use by 2 or 3. When the subject enters the room, the first interrogator asks a double talk question, one which seems straightforward but is essentially nonsensical, just like Alice in Wonderland. Whether the interrogatee tries to answer or not, the second interrogator follows up, interrupting any attempted response with a wholly unrelated and equally illogical query. Sometimes 2 or more questions are asked simultaneously. Pitch, tone, and volume of the interrogator's voices are unrelated to the import of the questions. No pattern of questions and answers is permitted to develop, nor do the questions themselves relate logically to each other. In this strange atmosphere, the subject finds that the pattern of speech and thought, which he has learned to consider normal, have been replaced by an eerie meaninglessness. The interrogatee may start laughing or refuse to take the situation seriously, but as the process continues day after day, if necessary, the subject begins to try to make sense of the situation, which becomes mentally intolerable. He is now likely to make significant admissions or even pour out his story just to stop the flow of babble which assails him. This technique may be especially effective with the orderly, obstinate type. The whole goal of this official technique, the Alice in Wonderland technique, is to use as much nonsensical, illogical babble to just absolutely drive the person nuts, and they will give up anything in order to make it stop. Very interesting. So it's similar to Alice in Wonderland. I don't know how many people have seen it or if you remember anything about it, but the entire story doesn't make sense. The whole thing is in riddles and babbling and nonsensical, illogical, double talk, all this type of stuff. It was written, the old original story was written that way, and so the movie does the same thing. And so this has become a major element when it comes to using it for mind control, whether it's for kids, interrogation, or we'll find out a little bit later, Scientology. Yes, I kid you not. So speaking of which, let's take a little further look at Alice in Wonderland and see what's going on. So it was originally written by, people know him as Lewis Carroll. That's his pen name, but his actual name is Charles Lutwidge Dodgson. He was born 1832, died 1898. Carroll was an Anglican priest, but studied and followed occultic and theosophy, which were injected into his writing of Alice in Wonderland, as well as the sequel through The Looking Glass. So he's all over the place when it comes to this. He's a Gnostic. There's no other way to put it. Theosophy is based off of Gnosticism. He's a Gnostic. And so his whole goal of this stuff was to, he was about trying to find enlightenment. He was part of the Enlightenment era. And a lot of what he wrote, his stories and everything, really had nothing. He was the one that did like the Jabberwocky poem and that type of stuff. Knowing this, basically that theme is used for mind control and interrogation, as well as the injection of the occultic and Gnostic roots. If you take a look at Alice in Wonderland through The Looking Glass, you will see that it is full of occultic and mystic symbolism as well, if you ever take a look at that type of stuff. So knowing that the theme has to do with chaos and confusion, as well as occultic and Gnostic roots and symbolism, we can kind of find this in some other movements that we see going on. Now, we've talked about the Q movement already when it came to Michael Flynn, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and that type of stuff. But the entire Q movement revolves around Alice in Wonderland as well, and we'll see some of those themes. So let's take a look at Q and its Alice in Wonderland references. First of all, follow the white rabbit. Everything about the Q movement, if you want to find more information, is following the white rabbit, which ultimately that's what Alice in Wonderland is. Follow the white rabbit, right? In order to find new knowledge, in order to expand your knowledge, in order to go further down the hole, to find the alternate mirrored version of reality, you have to follow the white rabbit, which comes straight from Alice in Wonderland, which is the main thing to Q. What's the other one? Well, the Q drops usually feature a clock and or Mickey Mouse. Yes. I did a episode a while ago, a podcast a while ago called Ingersoll Lockwood, which it was about how I went down the rabbit hole of the Q movement in order to show how demonic and part of the awakening, the New Age awakening theme that it really has to do. And the amount of white rabbits, clocks, and Mickey Mouse that I came across was everywhere. If you wanted to find more secret information, there are usually hidden links and whatnot. You had to continue to click on the clock and or a picture of Mickey Mouse in order to find it. Another one is Project Looking Glass, which, again, I kind of discussed that a little bit in that Ingersoll Lockwood episode if you want to go back and find it. But Project Looking Glass is the belief that they have an ancient tool that allows people to see an alternate version of reality. They're able to see the future type of thing. And according to Q and many people who follow Q, they say through Project Looking Glass, they were able to see the outcome of what is going to happen. And so the goal is the guy who went into the future and saw that, brought that information back, and now he's dropping these little drops of information in order to make everybody aware of what's going to happen in the future. Now, of course, we understand that none of that has actually happened, but yet people still follow it. But the whole perception is Project Looking Glass. Well, what was the second book that Lewis Carroll wrote that was a part of the Alice in Wonderland thing? Through the Looking Glass. Last one, The Matrix. This one is often used in the Q movement as well. Now, I did an episode of Showtime breaking down all of the Gnostic elements that are revolved around it, but ultimately they make reference to The Matrix. Now, in The Matrix, the first thing you know is Neo, the Keanu Reeves character, has to follow the white rabbit in order to find the truth, and then he's fed the red pill, blue pill. This is something that I think all of us need to stay away from, is the red pill, blue pill type of stuff. We need to avoid that because that is fully wrapped up in this whole mind control program that's going on. The Q movement, I've already shown how demonically led and CIA led it really is, but it's all wrapped up and based upon Alice in Wonderland. Do you think that it's coincidence that movement would be affiliated with Alice in Wonderland, which the CIA uses that in order to further their agenda on mind control. No, I think they're one and the same. And they use this element all the time when it comes to this as well. Another movie, which is pretty interesting, it's based off a video game, but they changed it for the movie, is one called Resident Evil. Yeah, the name alone should tell you everything that you need to know about it. But it's about this corporation, this biotech corporation that creates basically zombies out of this drug that they make. But the movie is called Resident Evil, and it's about a mind control clone who is called Project Alice. Yeah, a mind control clone called Project Alice. Along with that, she is just one of hundreds of other Project Alice's clones that is being experimented upon. And the movie revolves around things that we would find in not only Alice in Wonderland, but Freemasonry as well. The movie starts off with her awakening in a bathroom that is basically a chessboard, black and white, which if you guys know anything about Alice in Wonderland, the chessboard and everything, as well as Freemasonry. She also awakens between two pillars, that's part of Freemasonry as well. She is basically being controlled by an AI girl called the Red Queen, which again, straight from Alice in Wonderland. And as well as in the opening scene, she immediately awakens to look through a mirror, which if you read the story through the looking glass, that's how she enters into the new world, is through a mirror. And so we can see the elements of Alice in Wonderland and mind control being shown within this movie as well. Now, I just gave you a couple examples. It's all over the place. Just keep this stuff in mind as you watch movies, and you'll be surprised at the reference to Alice in Wonderland that you will find in a lot of these movies as well. So be watchful for the symbolism in not only media, but also the movements in news, artwork, and even what some people reference when they talk. Yes. Now, another area of Alice in Wonderland mind control is used in Scientology. This is an interesting one to say the least. Before we actually get to the Scientology, we have to go back in history. How far back? You guys want to take a field trip to ancient Egypt? Well, if you don't want to go, we're going anyways. So let's go to ancient Egypt. Egypt was notorious for their demonic, pagan, and occultic rituals, beliefs, and witchcraft. It is all over the place. It should be no surprise if you know anything about, even just looking at the hieroglyphs and stuff like that, that should tell you all that. But it goes deep. We're still, to this day, learning about some of the stuff that they're doing. Basically, ancient Egypt, they practiced and perfected physical as well as psychological torture, hypnosis. Yes, they were doing hypnotism, as well as potions or drugs, as well as spells and witchcrafts. And much of it has to do with mind control in order to grab a hold of their victim's mind, ultimately. Now, if we take a look at the Book of the Dead, I'm putting this right here, do not recommend looking into the Book of the Dead. You can find free interpretations online and stuff like that. I don't recommend it. I know I still get a lot of people saying you really shouldn't be looking into the texts and stuff that you do. I understand that. I go in praying for protection for the Lord to find what I need to find, and then I peel out of there before I go any further. I don't recommend looking into it. I looked into it. I'm going to tell you what I found. So I'm just letting you guys know ahead of time. I don't ever recommend looking into some of these pagan books and stuff. And this is one that I don't recommend either, because it's a giant collection of writings gathered from various locations around Egypt, including tomes and torture rooms and that type of stuff, that contains rituals and spells to help the dead survive the underworld. It's not a good read. It's evil. It is straight evil. But within it contains manuals and spells for potions, hypnotism, as well as the various torture practices that they do. Egypt would use these in order to keep ruling power, control over the people, as well as use it for interrogation and punishment purposes on this. Many of the tactics used by ancient Egypt and their pagan magic are used within the CIA's MKUltra and Monarch programs. If you guys remember, when we went over MKUltra last week, we were talking about the occultism of the Nazis and what they were doing. They were all wrapped up in this type of stuff. They went deep into alien stuff, which ultimately we know that's demonic. They went deep into Tibetan Buddhism. They went deep into this stuff as well as the Egyptian stuff, as well as things like ancient Native Americans and what they believed and stuff. They took all these different elements of the magic and ritual and pagan witchcraft that was going on. Shamanism is another big one. They took all that stuff and they put it into their mind control program. Why? All of that stuff is evil and straight from Satan. So is the mind control program. But they realized that this stuff works. This is supernatural stuff that does work. And it has been proven to work as well. And so ultimately, the stuff from the Book of the Dead has been used in the CIA programs for illusions and threats to harm to loved ones, isolation, sensory deprivation, fake supernatural illusions, hallucinogenic drugs, bright light exposure, and even manipulation of time. All of this stuff is found from ancient Egyptian torture mind control texts, manuals. We went over pretty much all of that stuff so far in this series, and it's all been it's somehow influenced in the CIA and MKUltra and other mind control programs. This is where it comes from, is this ancient Egyptian stuff from Sumeria and Babylon as well. Greece has some of their stuff in there as well. This stuff is taken from these ancient places. Now, I mentioned manipulation of time. We haven't exactly covered that one yet. What does that mean? Well, if we go to page 77, literally the next page of the Kubark manual that we just talked about, the Alice in Wonderland, we will find manipulation of time. Page 77. Persistent manipulation of time by retarding and advancing clocks and serving meals at odd times, 10 minutes or 10 hours after the last food was given. Day and night are jumbled. Interrogation sessions are simply unpatterned. The subject may be brought back for more questioning just a few minutes after being dismissed for the night. Half-hearted efforts to cooperate can be ignored, and conversely, he can be rewarded for non-cooperation. For example, a successfully resisting source may become distraught if given some reward for the valuable contribution that has been made. The Alice in Wonderland technique can reinforce the effect. So they're saying combine both the Alice in Wonderland as well as the manipulation of time. Hey guys, what is one of the symbolism things for Alice in Wonderland? The clock. Yeah, it's all together. And it says 2 or more interrogators questioning as a team and in relays and thoroughly jumbling the timing of both methods can ask questions which make it impossible for the interrogatee to give sensible significant answers. A subject who is cut off from the world and knows seeks to recreate it in some measure in the new and strange environment. He may try to keep track of time, to live in the familiar past, to cling to old concepts of loyalty, to establish with one or more interrogators interpersonal relationships resembling those he had in the earlier with other people, and to build other bridges back to known. Thwarting his attempts to do so is likely to drive him deeper and deeper into himself until he is no longer able to control his responses in adult fashion. So a part of it has to do with the manipulation of time, which is found as an interrogation and mind control tactic of ancient Egypt. Man, that's fascinating. I wonder where the CIA got that idea from. Pretty easy. These same rituals and spells have been earned throughout time, or have been used throughout time, as well as throughout Satanism. The Luciferians, the occultic Nazis, the CIA, and so forth have all used these tactics from ancient Egypt. Why? Because they were satanic back then. The satanic cabal wants to use them today. You'll find that these are You'll find that these are the same type of tactics used by the Knights Templar as well, along with the Freemasons, and even the Catholic Church have used these tactics as well for what they wanted to do. As history goes, on May 1st, 1776, a Bavarian Jesuit by the name of Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati. He was also a Freemason, by the way, to overthrow the Bavarian government. So as history tells us, that this is the guy who supposedly founded the Illuminati. Johan Adam Weishaupt, born 1748, died 1830. Now, again, that's just what his history tells us. This one's kind of a tough one to actually crack down if he was the one who really did it or not, but I'm just going off of what I've uncovered on this. Now, eventually, they went underground. The Illuminati went underground with the help of the satanic bloodlines, and they expanded globally, as well as part of which had to do with inventing and perfecting mental manipulation, mental warfare. And so the Illuminati was eventually disbanded, as they say, but ultimately they went underground, and with the help of the satanic families, people like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and so on and so forth. We're not going to get into all that type of stuff. That's a different thing. But ultimately, this was to help expand a little bit on what they're trying to accomplish, and part of that had to do with the mental warfare. Now, in 1921, a guy by the name of John Rawlings Rees set up the Tavistock Square Clinic for Functional Nervous Disorder, which would officially become Tavistock Institute of Human Relations in 1947. I'm sure some people have heard of the Tavistock Institute. This is the main hub for the satanic cabal, the Luciferians, to develop mind control programs. This is the central hub now. Back in the day, they ultimately created this in order to do it, because the goal was to use hypnosis as well as metaphysical psychology with the likes of Sigmund Freud's controlling humans philosophy in order to develop ways of manipulating people's minds. And that's what it was founded upon. They'll tell you that it was founded upon trying to help the psychology of returning World War I veterans. No, not even close. The whole goal of this is to try and develop and perfect mental manipulation programs. Rees, who established this institute, he established it with the direction of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, or now known as Chatham House. If you guys don't know Chatham House, basically that was the Council on Foreign Relations before the Council on Foreign Relations. They were developed 1 year before the Council on Foreign Relations. They are basically one and the same. You have the one over in Europe, and then you have the one here in America. And basically, they were formed during the Rockefeller orchestration of World War I, and they were formed at the same time as the League of Nations was. This was completely 100% orchestrated by the Rockefellers as well as the Freemasons, to develop the global stuff, as well as to create Tavistock in order to jumpstart the mental manipulation program that they use. Rees was even used to study one of Adolf Hitler's main men, Rudolf Hess. And he studied Hess and went into his head to learn about the psychological tactics that the Nazis were using back then as well. And so this was about trying to figure out the tactics of what Nazis were doing when it came to that. Now, along with that, after World War II, jumping ahead a little bit, the Rockefeller Foundation sent one of their main physicians. He was the head of the Rockefeller Foundation's medical side, by the name of Alan Gregg. After World War II, the Rockefeller Foundation sent Alan Gregg to help fund and guide Tavistock and their psychological warfare programs, which in part led to a deeper and more broad research of the MKUltra program, with roots tied to ancient Egypt. This dude is highly respected and honored within the Rockefeller Foundation for many things he did, including helping Tavistock basically jump from a little clinic to the huge global institute that it really is today. Groups like Chatham House, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Montpellier Society, the Club of Rome, and others work with Tavistock to learn how to institute the mass agenda. Basically, through the giant network, Tavistock studies and comes up with new programs to institute more psychological programs into places like the Club of Rome, Trilateral Commission, UN, Chatham House, and so on and so forth. That's their entire goal, was to develop new programs and send it into the broader, more politically driven groups out there. And look at what we got going on today, working flawlessly. Working flawlessly. The same institutes that are involved in Tavistock are also involved with the CIA and the MKUltra program, no surprise. And what on earth does this have to do with Alice in Wonderland and Scientology? We just kind of took a trip through ancient Egypt and through all these random places when it comes to World War I and World War II and stuff. What on earth does this have to do with Scientology? Well, Scientology is built on random and confusion in order to control the mind through pure insanity. If you guys know anything about Scientology, I've been looking into some stuff from ex-Scientologists, and my word, the stuff that they talk about when it comes to the entire program is to literally drive people mad so they retreat into their head and then become a robot. That is ultimately what Scientology is designed to do. And so all their programs and all their teachings have to do with just that. When you keep someone in a constant state of confusion and chaos where answers don't make sense, you can break down the mind just as they do with the Alice in Wonderland technique. Ron Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology, even created the training routines where members must go through these exercises, which accomplishes the mental breakdown and mind control process. Basically, he came up with this training routine program. There's a whole bunch of them. And the goal is to be able to control every single conversation that you're having. And they teach you how to mentally manipulate the person. So that person can then mentally manipulate anybody else that they're talking to. And that's what the goal is to create a giant mass Alice in Wonderland program through Scientology. And that's ultimately with what's going on. Guess what one of the training routines is called? It's training routine number 1 is called Dear Alice. TR1 is a drill to train the student to deliver a command newly and in a new unit of time to a pre-clear without flinching or trying to overwhelm or using a via. A phrase is picked out of the book Alice in Wonderland and read to the coach. It is repeated until the coach is satisfied and arrived where he is. TR1 is called Dear Alice. Yeah. The entire program of this is to use Alice in Wonderland in order to not only train the person doing it to not even be fazed by confusion or babble or insanity, but also to teach the person how to use double speak on the person that they're talking to in order to confuse them. Because why? It grants them control of that conversation. The entire point of Scientology is to control the conversation, control the environment, and control whoever's in the room with the Scientologist. Kind of like the Alice in Wonderland tactic. Use insanity and confusion to control the room and the environment. Break down the person that you're talking to. That is ultimately what Scientology is being used for, and was designed and created by Ron Hubbard. You see, Ron Hubbard applied Aleister Crowley's Thelema religion within Scientology. Crowley is noted as telling his followers to read through the looking glass. Yes, one of the books that Aleister Crowley recommends all Thelema followers is to read through the looking glass. Why? Because it will help understand the Kabbalah, which, if you don't know anything about Thelema, it takes a lot from the Kabbalah within the religion. Crowley stole a lot from that and put it in there. And he says, reading through the looking glass will help you with that. Well, that should be no surprise, as Lewis Carroll was a Gnostic and part of Theosophy, which is also wrapped up in that as well. Much of Hubbard's occultism came from the love of Crowley's book known as Magick In Theory and Practice, or also known as the Master Therion. It's basically the same book. And this is a book by Aleister Crowley. And at the age of, I believe he was 16, he was reading that thing. He loved it. And he based a lot of his Scientology off of that book as well. The connection runs deep, as Hubbard was good friends for a short time with the Ordo Templi Orientis Lodge Master, which is the Thelema temple, by the Lodge Master by the name of Jack Parsons. He was part of the rocket program and all that type of stuff, but he was a devout Thelema follower as well, in which Jack Parsons told Crowley that Hubbard was the most Thelematic person he has ever met. And so he had a massive connection. Ron Hubbard had a massive connection to Aleister Crowley and Thelema through this Jack Parsons guy. There's reports that Hubbard and Parsons would get together and actually summon spiritual entities together as well. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That answers a lot of questions. And we're seeing the theme of Alice in Wonderland running through all of this. Thelema, Scientology, Aleister Crowley, through the mental manipulation stuff that we see today, that all goes back to what the CIA was doing, which is rooted in ancient Egypt. Connections to Thelema and Crowley, mind control, Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass. But the question remains, is Scientology connected to Tavistock? Could it be that Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard were actually a part of a Tavistock mind control program? I don't know. There's some stuff I've found that maybe connects them, but I can't verify it, so I can't sit here and tell you that it is. But I find it fascinating that the same stuff that the CIA was doing, along with the Nazis as well as Tavistock, are the same stuff that L. Ron Hubbard was doing with Scientology. Maybe Scientology is one giant experiment. I can't tell you for sure, though. I cannot tell you for sure. What we do know, however, is that the same mind control tactics of Tavistock is found within Q, which is found within the CIA, which is found within Thelema, which is found within Scientology. And they all have roots leading back to ancient Egypt, as well as they all hang on to the symbology and the occultic confusion writings of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, which again, Lewis Carroll was a Gnostic and a Theosophist. It's mind-bending, isn't it? It's absolutely mind-bending how all this stuff is wrapped together through confusion. What's a big tactic that we see today? Confusion. We see it all over the place. Nonsensical speech. Just random babbling, double talk. Everywhere you go. As well as trauma-inducing images and videos and stories. It all has some type of root within a mind control situation. It's truly mind-bending.